Hi everybody, welcome back to Missy's Imaginings. I wanted to work on a project today that would be an easy follow-up to the ninja pants that have the waistband. But before I get into that, I have a couple little things. I went ahead and thought about how I sew the pants, and here I did the 2 pleats and I had enough room, so I added another pleat. I really didn't think about it, I just added it in. But when I got them done, I thought, yeah, I like how they look, but you can still see the center seam line, which I don't know if you can see it as well on the white pants in this lining, but it's just a seam line there that you can see. And so I thought, yeah, that's okay, but what if we go ahead and take those pleats together right at the front? And this one, it kind of buckled when I was trying to sew, so be sure you pin your pleats down longer than I did, because it tended to not want to fold the fabric. But I went ahead and took that center pleat and brought those pieces together right at the center seam line, so it kind of camouflages the seam line a little better, and I like that better. I also made the waistband a little bit wider, and so you can play with it depending on what doll you have, how wide you like it. But I just thought you might want to see how wide it is the way the pattern is now, because this one was a little too narrow, and so it got a little wonky when I was trying to actually put it on. But anyway, it's something that's totally adjustable to what you want. You can play with it. But I did want to show that I kind of changed the way I sewed this pair and brought that pleat to the center, which I like better. It's the very same pattern. It does take it in a little bit smaller, I think, with having the smaller waistband, but he's real skinny, so I wanted a tighter fit so his pants wouldn't fall down, obviously. But anyway, there's still lots of room, and there's lots of extra length. So if you have one of the really big guys, these pants would still more than work, because look at that. If we bring that up, there's lots of extra length there. So there's tons of length, there's tons of room. It can work for any of your guys. You just have to make sure that your waistband will actually, once it's sewn together, will slip up and over their hips. Just make sure of that before you actually put it on the pants, so you don't waste any work. The other thing I was going to show you is this is like an old-fashioned doll stand with the back stand and the front base instead of the saddle kind. Because on the guys, you know, sometimes the saddle ones just don't want to work very well. But I didn't have any that were tall enough for a 70-centimeter doll. So once again, you know me, I just want to find something that'll work. So I just took some of our old steps from, oh, and he's got a scepter for some reason. I was just going to see if he could hold it. I took a hanger, of course, you know me and my metal hangers, and just made a new hooked piece to slide in there, because the original stand only went up to about here, but this one can get a lot taller now. So it was hard to bend, it didn't want to cooperate a lot, but it enables me to use this stand with a lot taller doll. So for the purpose, it works. So just another thing you can do with a hanger, and it makes it just a little more functional for your taller dolls. What I wanted to do is to make a turtleneck shirt to go with these pants. I've done turtleneck shirts before for the Tonner fellas. Maybe I'll put a picture there. One of the turtleneck shirts. Ta-da! They're really simple. There's a couple different ways you can do them, and it's just so basic and so easy and fast to have a shirt to throw on your fella. With the Tonner, because their head is relatively small compared to their body size, all the turtlenecks that I've done are actually pullover turtleneck shirts. So if you're working on a BJD, depending on the style, or for the example, Jack here has really big pointed ears that would make pulling on a turtleneck shirt difficult. So depending on what doll you're fitting, you may want to leave some opening at the back so that the neck opening is big enough to clear, you know, pointed ears like this, or if you have really delicate eyelashes and you don't want them to get messed up, or if the doll just has a substantially larger head style, like for instance the Blythe dolls, the pull-up dolls, they have this really big head and this little tiny body. So depending on what you're working with, that will dictate what kind of an opening you want. If the head and the shoulders are all relatively normal shaped, I know the Ipplehouse dolls, BJD speaking wise, they have a smaller head just because they have a more natural, realistic sculpt than say the more anime style BJDs. So you just kind of have to see. If you're doing just an Ipplehouse guy, you could probably get away with a pullover shirt. You will have to remove the wig, or else it'll just flip it all over. But if you want to make sure it'll clear a larger head, or like I say, fancy eyelashes or something like that, then you might want to either have a larger opening in the back or just have an open back that will snap. So what I'm going to do for the one we put together is I'm going to do the turtleneck shirt with a larger back neck opening, but not a full open back. So it'll be slightly pullover, but not all the way pullover, just so that you can see how that works. An open back is pretty straightforward, you just don't sew it in the back. But if you want that partial opening, that's what we're going to do today. Drafting them is a lot like making a t-shirt. I have a couple patterns on the website, I think, or making patterns that are similar, but I've never done one for this size of a fella yet. So I thought it'd be something fun to do since we had the holiday weekend, and now I just wanted to have something fun to post. So, and they, obviously I've got a couple guys that need shirts. So that's what we're gonna do. And it's pretty simple. There's a couple different ways, like I say, you can do this. Either you can do it without a shoulder seam, which means you're gonna place your pattern pieces on a fold at the shoulder, or you can have a shoulder seam, which means you can place your pieces on the front center fold, or you can just make the whole pattern piece all one piece. There's just a lot of variations. You just want to make sure that the grain goes correctly for what fabric you're using. The other FYI in doing a turtleneck is usually you're going to want a knit fabric or some kind of a sweater fabric. If you want the neck hole to be able to stretch, a lot of times it's good if you have a serger machine like is behind me, because a serger is designed to have give in the seam more than a straight seam machine. If not, you can just make sure that you're going to have enough room for the neckline of what you want, and then make the actual ribbing or neck part or turtleneck part small enough to bunch that back up to sizing, just like we did on his pants. How we stretch the bottom edge as we attach it to the pants, but the folded edge up here on the top shrinks back to its normal size. That's in essence what we're going to be doing for the turtleneck. It's going to be the same thing. So it's an easy thing to do. You can put one together relatively quickly. So we're going to get the pattern ready and cut one out, and we'll put one together. And that way your fellas will be able to have a very quick and easy shirt. So we'll switch up the machine, and here we go. pattern's all made, and here is the back pieces, and I've cut 2 of those. So there's 2 of the back, and they are not cut on the fold or anything, because this whole center back is going to involve the seam. The center, or the front, was cut on a center fold. So this is just one piece that is actually on the fold of the fabric, 2 sleeves, and the turtleneck. So my first order of business is going to be to connect the shirt front to back at the shoulders, and then I will put the sleeves on, and so that's what I'm going to be doing. 1/4 inch seams. So we'll open it up here, and we're going to do good side to good side, which on this knit is kind of hard to tell. Kind of looks the same on both sides, but we'll find the one that looks a little more ribbed than the other. Now the next step is totally up to you on how finished you want your garment to be. So if you want, you can just be done with the shoulders at this point. I tend to like to top stitch my seam allowance down, which gives me a little bit of a top stitch on either side of the seam for the shoulders. So I just like the way that looks. It kind of helps the shoulders lay down a little bit nicer, and it also helps keep my seam allowance in place when I go to put the turtleneck collar onto the shirt. So I like to, you don't have to, but I kind of prefer doing this, and I don't worry about back tacking because this is just cosmetic. So I just kind of go from the edge of the sleeve, and I cross my seam at the neckline, and then come back. So it's just a real quick, easy step. My foot will cooperate. My machine is getting very old, lots of mileage through here, and so my foot doesn't always like to stay up. But anyway, so I like to do that. I like to add the little bit of top stitching on the shoulders. Just looks a little more tailored that way. And when making these simple t-shirt or turtleneck type garments, the cool part is that the sleeves are so easy. So here we go. On the right side, we're going to take sleeve fabric, and we'll take the right side of the sleeve fabric to the right side of the shirt fabric. So it looks like, well, they really do look the same on this knit fabric. So I'm going to simply fold the sleeve in half and use a pin to mark where that is. If you want, well, you can even do this little trick too. We'll throw this in here just because we're putting it together. As you can notch right there, just a little notch, and then it makes it easy to see where that center is. So you line that up with the seam, and now the sleeve has a slight curve, but not much, and when you're working with knit, it's gonna go fine. But all you're going to do is sew the sleeve to the shirt by matching the center of the sleeve to the shoulder seam, and just sew it on. Go. Once the sleeve is in, it will look like this, and then if you want, you can top stitch along the top edge of the shoulder. Where the sleeve connects to the shirt. Let's see. I'll maybe just do that just on this one so you can see how it looks, and then I'm going to hem the sleeve. Then I'll do the exact same thing on the other side. So now the sleeves are all on and hemmed, and I went ahead and top stitched the shoulder seam. There we go. So now we're going to fold right sides together at the shoulders, and I'm going to start at the sleeve hem. I'm going to sew to the sleeve, or to the shirt rather, and then come a little inside of where it has been stitched to the shirt bodice, and then come down the side. So now the shirt is pretty much all put together except for the collar. So the collar is going to be, it's a little more tricky. Just what you wanted to hear, right? So the first thing I'm going to do, because this one is going to be opened in the back, is with the right sides together. So I'm going to fold the length of the collar like this, and I'm going to sew the end shut with a 1/4 inch seam. And then when each end is done, I'm just going to trim a little bit of that corner tip that's on the inside of the fold, just so when I flip that right side out, it'll be easier to have my little corner look nice. There we go. Just taking a little bit of that out there. Again, trying to get my foot to stay up. That's always exciting. Okay, then I'm going to take this and turn it right side out. There we go. And now there's a couple ways that you can do this. Because I want to get the stretch really even, I am going to go ahead and with the inside of the shirt facing out, which is the way it is right now, I'm going to fold back the edges 1/4 of an inch. That would be a seam allowance. And then I'm going to go ahead and put my shirt onto it like this on the inside, and I'm just going to pin that edge. And like I say, this is like the easiest way to do it. It might not be the very best way, but it is an easy way. So then the same on this side. So I'm folding it back just because I'm looking at the inside of the fabric. So I'm going to fold that back, and now I'm going to pin the other edge of the collar to the right side of the shirt on this side, and I'm going to pin it. There we go. Now I'm going to connect my edges of the collar, not sewing them but just lining them up, and I'm going to pull my collar so that I can find the center front of the collar, and I'm working with the raw edge here, and I'm going to put a pin in that center front. Then I'm also going to, and I've only got the collar pinned to the back of the shirt at this point, so I'm going to line up my shoulder seams and bring the collar, the neck edge, forward, so that I can find the center front of my shirt. And here I'm going to just notch, because that's just a single layer of fabric, so that's a quick, easy way to do it. Now I'm going to open that back up, and I'm going to bring that center front of the collar and line it up with the notch that I just made and pin it on. And now, since I'm working with a doll shirt, it's not a lot of length, and I'm not working inside a circle, so it's a little easier to maneuver things. So I'm going to just stretch this as I sew it so that my collar will be long enough to meet the edge of the shirt. So I'm just going to stretch my collar, and I'm going to sew the collar to the neckline of the shirt, just gently pulling that collar long enough to where it actually is the same length as the shirt. If you're more comfortable and you like things in place better, you can always go ahead and pin like the shoulder seam if you want to. So if I stretch it out, there we go. And the other thing is, you want to make sure that all your raw edges are together. You don't want them slipping apart there. So if you pull that snug and bring it up, there we go. You could pin it real quick. Would look like that. This one, if you want to pull that, I've got other fuzz in here. It was in there. This fabric was in the bin with some fur, so I've got some faux fur hair on my shirt pattern here. Okay, line this one up. Gently pull that so that it's snug. All the raw edges are together, and you can pin here, and that would make your shoulder seams lined up correctly. But now we're just going to sew the collar to the shirt, and because the shirt is longer, I think I'm going to try having it on top, just so I can kind of monitor those seam allowance that are in there and make sure there's no wrinkles in the shirt as I'm sewing the collar on. So first I'm going to start at one edge, 1/4 inch seam, and make sure everything's laying flat. I'm going to, and because it's kind of hard to back tack on this, I'm going to go in about 1/4 of an inch, and I'm going to put the foot down and sink my needle, and I'm actually going to back tack stitch first. I'm going to take out the pin, so it'll do a couple stitches, but that way it kind of anchors it and doesn't have to, it's easier for me to get the fabric to feed through the machine, because on this really soft knit fabric with little tiny seam allowance, sometimes it's hard to get that started. So if you want to start in just a little bit back, go backwards first and then go forward, you're essentially just backtacking in the reverse order, but you can kind of see what you're doing better. So here I'm going to get that shoulder lined up. Okay, I'm going to gently pull so that everything's lined up straight. Make sure my raw edges are together. And sometimes people might like to have the shirt on the bottom, just because your feed dogs kind of help feed that through, but I kind of like being able to see what I'm doing sometimes, especially on a dark fabric like this. I can have a little bit more of a better view if I have the shirt up on top. There we go. There we go. And I'm not going to trim, well, I might trim just a tiny bit of this corner, but not very much, because I don't really want it sticking out, but I don't want to lose fabric, because I need a place to sew snaps. Because since this back is going to be more open, it's going to need snaps on there. So take out our pins. Alright. Now we'll turn it right side out. Oh, and in case if you'd missed it, because I sped up the camera, I did snip just a little bit under the arms in towards that corner. It just kind of helps the sleeves to turn right side out a little easier, makes it lay a little bit better. So there we go. Pull that out. Check and make sure there's no pleats along our neckline. And it looks like it's all good. So now we've already got a finished folded edge on the back, and there is a little bit, you know, of that rough fabric on the bottom of the seam allowance, but this is knit, so it's not going to fray and cause a big mess. And I'm going to have a snap here, so that will help hold that down once the shirt is finished. So it's going to look real nice because my snap seam threads are going to hold that down. So the next step is simply to, I'll have to turn it back the other way, but I wanted to show you what it looks like. So here's what the front of the shirt will look like. So we've got a turtleneck shirt. So the last steps is, it's up to you. You can leave it totally open in the back and simply turn that over and like sew a seam to finish that edge. But I am going to make it a partial pullover. So to do that, all you have to do is decide how big of an opening you want. So obviously this is a pretty small neckline that won't go over a lot of dolls' heads. So I'm going to come down about, let's see, what do I want to do? 2 inches maybe from the neckline. So right about here, because that would give me this big of an opening to go around a doll's head. So about 2 inches down is where I'm going to put a pin. There we go. So I'm going to pin there. And I'm going to sew from the hem up to the pin and then hem the shirt, and then all I have to do is put on my snaps. And here is the finished turtleneck shirt. The fun thing is with these shirts, you can have the long sleeves, or if you want it to have just kind of a more modern look, here we go, you can push the sleeves up. But the shirt has the partial opening in the back. Let's see, we'll move his hair here. So I did put a snap at the top of the turtleneck and at the base of the neck. And then this, of course, is just the edge that we folded in before we did that seam. So it looks nice once it's done. So just a couple snaps. Sometimes if you want to do a mock turtle neck or a crew neck, then you might only need the one snap. But because this is tall and I wanted it to stand up, I went ahead and put the snap also at the top. If you do a complete pullover, of course, you would sew this like a tube like we did on the waistband and then sew all the way around it, but I wanted to have that partial opening. It went over his head and his ears fine. So that's what the shirt looks like when it's finished. It has a little bit of a drop shoulder because I wanted it wide. I just kind of like that look on a turtleneck. You can shorten the sleeves and use it for a t-shirt and make this real thin, and then you've got a t-shirt pattern. So you can kind of have fun with it. You can have long sleeves, short sleeves, 3/4 sleeves. So it's just got a lot of versatility for a pattern. It's very basic, very easy. So enjoy, have fun sewing, and I'll see you next time.